Hey everyone, welcome into this special edition of the American Huddle from the road. I'm Haley Outen, and in the studio is Andy Gresh. We're on the campus, or I should say, I'm on the campus of UCF covering this week's men's soccer championship, but that does not stop our football coverage. So, Andy, let's start off looking back at week 10. There was quite a few surprises, things starting to shake up, especially in that West Division, and that's a pretty good place to start with SMU handing Houston a loss. And not only did SMU's offense rise to the occasion, their defense held Houston to under 41 points for the first time this season. Why did SMU find success on both sides of the field?
Well, Haley, I think it's a couple of things. Number one, no Ed Oliver helps in terms of scoring points, and that's a big one now. I mean, that's a big caveat is that SMU did this. No Ed Oliver in there for the Houston defense. And, you know, Haley, was one of the rare times where offensively De'Aaron King was good, but he wasn't Superman. I think there have been a couple of performances this year where he's ripped it open and shown the S on his chest. Only 3 touchdowns in this one. The passing game didn't click like it had before. And I thought Ben Hicks for SMU, quite honestly, Haley, was fantastic. He throws 4 touchdown passes to 4 different receivers, starting to spread the ball around a little bit. And when you're getting the ball out quick and spreading it around, you frustrate a defense, especially without their big pass rusher in the middle in Ed Oliver. So a very big win for SMU in terms of their bowl eligibility. And in terms of Houston, it's still all in front of them. But let's be honest, this was a blow to the psyche, I think, on Saturday.
In fact, SMU quarterback Ben Hicks named this week's Offensive Player of the Week in the American, and the Mustangs just a game behind now in the West Division standings. And another team that turned some heads this weekend was Tulane, who is tied with SMU in that second place spot. The Green Wave stepped up against Memphis earlier in the season and then absolutely dominated in Tampa on Saturday. What was the difference to you in this one?
The USF couldn't stop the run. 365 yards and 5 touchdowns allowed by the Bulls defense, Haley. I mean, you ain't going to win like that. And we have chronicled here before on the American Huddle about South Florida and some of their issues defensively. I mean, Tulane threw the ball 11 times, and I've been the one sitting here screaming they need more out of the passing game. Well, when you can run it over 50 times for 365 yards and 5 touchdowns, you're going to have a chance to win a lot of football games. And for USF, this is a very big loss. They still had a chance to control their own fate here in the American. This was a big ding against them, but it's really all about that USF defense just not being able to slow down the run of Tulane at all.
Let's stay in the West and talk about Memphis. They got back on track this past week at ECU. How are the Tigers kind of shaping up with just a couple of weeks left to go in the regular season?
Well, they're clearly a spoiler now, given their record, Haley, but I look at Memphis and their ability to run the football with Darrell Henderson, who had another big game this week, and Brady White was really good. No interceptions, which I think is a really big deal for him in that Memphis offense. And I think we've come to know now that the Tigers, they can score. They're going to put up points. It's what are they going to do defensively? And to me, Memphis has become, in my opinion, and this isn't any disrespect, they're a front-running team. Get up 14-0, everything changes for them. They get down, and they got to start to throw the ball and take chances and get away from the running game. That's, to me, where they can start to struggle. But a good win for Mike Norvell's crew, and they still have an opportunity to be able to beat some people along the way who want to have or who have championship aspirations. And, I mean, he's one of those guys, or Memphis is one of those teams to be able to ruin somebody's season.
Important win for Memphis, too, because now they are just one win away from bowl eligibility. So just a step closer for the Tigers. But let's talk about Tulsa for a second. They got back into the win column with a very convincing 49-19 win against UConn, and they scored all of their points in the second and third quarters. How much does that win impact the confidence of the Golden Hurricane moving forward?
I think a lot. Look, you know, we were very realistic about the matchup heading in between UConn and Tulsa, and so they're struggling this year. They're riding the struggle bus. And not only have a big second quarter, but Haley, to then follow it up and have a 21-point third quarter as well. Now you're talking about building some momentum. You're taking to coaching at halftime. And this was the first time this year where Tulsa had the chance to really just grab a team by the neck and just choke them out. And I thought they did a good job of that. And for the Huskies, you know, again, there's just a lot of rhetoric coming out of stores about, hey, we're losing, but we're getting better. I think it's a tough sell to the fans out there. But this was big for Philip Montgomery and his Tulsa crew. They had a chance to really go out and make a statement, and they did that. They should feel good about themselves.
A team that is certainly showing great improvements this season, we've been talking about them for weeks now, is Cincinnati. They actually moved back into the top 25 in terms of the AP and coaches polls this past week after a 42-0 win over Navy. Andy, what statement did the UC defense make holding the Mids to just 171 yards of offense?
Yeah, and it's 124 yards rushing, I do believe, and a year ago they gave up 569. Now, I'm sure that tells us a little bit as to where Navy is at this point, and that they've had some issues this season. But for Cincinnati, I mean, it's been the quantum leap for Luke Fickell and his crew to have such a dramatic difference of some 400-plus yards in terms of rushing yards given up year to year is a big statement as to how much better they've gotten. Desmond Ridder was good, not great. He got it done both on the ground and through the air. And look, Cincinnati, Houston, UCF, these are the teams that we're going to be talking about here over the next couple of weeks in November relative to the American Conference Championship game. And you got to give Luke Fickell some credit. Josh Heupel's done a great job of picking up where UCF left off. But for my money, the coach of the year is Luke Fickell at Cincinnati.
Cincinnati still a game behind UCF in the East. Now we got to talk about this place right behind me, or on this side. Mirror effect here doesn't work. But UCF, this place was rocking on Thursday night, and some would argue that it was their first true test this season, facing Temple at home. They came up with a very important win in terms of the conference championship this season. What questions did we get answered about UCF on Thursday night, Andy?
Can they shut someone down in the second half? And they did. They did in a very big way. They hold Temple to 6 points in the second half and force 2 turnovers. That's what you want to see. Now, look, you can say that the score was too high and that, well, you know, if they're that good, they should be blowing people out. Look, UCF is on an unbelievable run of a winless streak here, and it's all not going to be perfect. I think Mackenzie Milton might be playing through something. We know that he's missed a couple of games over the last few weeks, and he was good, not great in this game. But at the end of the day, UCF did what they had to do, Haley. They continue to put points on the board. The defense stepped up and helped them in the second half. They're a better team than people are giving them credit for.
So UCF, one of 4 unbeaten teams left in the country, along with Alabama, Clemson, and Notre Dame. And I can tell you from walking around the UCF campus here, fans are not happy that their Knights moved down this week in the AP and coaches poll. Obviously, the important rankings coming out on Tuesday. But why is UCF headed in the wrong direction in these polls when there is still a 0 in the win column?
It's just real simple, Haley, and I ranted about this 2 weeks ago. There is a lack of respect for what UCF has done amongst the ink-stained wretches in this country who cover college football. There is a lack of respect for the American Athletic Conference, and I still think when people, there are sadly too many people out there who are voting in that poll who don't see P6, they only see P5. And the only people they're shorting are themselves. Let's hope those 15 people that get into the room who work for the college football playoff at least see that UCF, I mean, if they don't go up a spot, there's a problem given some of the people and the schools and the teams that lost this weekend. And there's still a lot of that to go in terms of these teams battling against each other. But I got to think the 0 in the right-hand column has got to mean something.
What is your argument to people out there questioning the strength of UCF's schedule in terms of some of those teams at the top? How fair is it?
I'm glad you asked this question, because what I would say to them is, then if these big boys aren't afraid of UCF, then why don't they schedule them? And I know these schedules can be done way in advance, but come on. If somebody wants to do a big money matchup in a neutral setting, that's something that can get done. And that's the part of this where the way the structure is currently set up and the way the ink-stained wretches acknowledge it, that's where the P5s can say, well, we don't want to play any of those schools or the best school from them trying to push their way in as a part of the P6. At the end of the day, why don't those teams want to play UCF? It's because they know it's a danger game, Haley, and they don't want to put their season on the line because they know one loss to UCF can derail them. And that's the part of this that no one's talking about, is that nobody wants to play UCF because they recognize within the game what people on the outside of the game aren't giving Central Florida credit for.
We'll certainly continue this conversation as the weeks roll on, but UCF will be back in action right here behind me on Saturday against Navy, so should be a good game to keep an eye on there. But before I let you go, Andy, I know I'm making you pretty jealous as I'm sitting out here in the sun and you're in New England in the cold.
If I were allowed a certain finger gesture, I would probably do it, and you could envision that it wouldn't be the old thumbs up, but I digress.
And we're going to be back here in Orlando with coverage all week long, both for soccer and football. The American Huddle continues on Friday night as we look ahead to a full conference lineup on Saturday. We hope you join us then. From the road, I'm Haley Outen, on behalf of Andy Gresh back in the studio. Have a great rest of your week.